wherever you're joining me from. My name is Tomás Garza, and welcome to A Course in Miracles 365 Awakening to Love, where we are going through the workbook for students, the fabled, infamous, maybe, right, workbook for students in A Course in Miracles. And we're on lesson number 69 today, which is very powerful and it is quite beautiful. And I want to walk you through that. But first of all, wherever you are joining me from, I want to welcome you and thank you all for tuning in. One of the things that I absolutely love about this is the fact that I'm live right now, and we've literally had people from all over the world join us for this live stream from Europe, North America, South America, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, you name it. People have been from all over. And if you're just joining us, welcome. We are going through the workbook for students. And whether you'll love it or you're finding it, well, maybe a little difficult, those are all valid experiences. And if you're new to A Course in Miracles, what we're talking about is one portion of the thought system that is called A Course in Miracles. There's also a text. There's what's called a manual for teachers, which is like an FAQ section. It's frequently asked questions that define some of the course's terminology, which is a little bit different than what we use in common parlance here. And that is some of the things that we've seen, like different definitions of forgiveness, for example, which we've been covering quite a bit. So today I want to launch right into lesson 69 here, and I invite you to type your questions and your comments here in the comment thread here on Facebook. I will go back and check them throughout the day. So if you're catching the replay, welcome. I'm curious about a lot of things on forgiveness. We've spent the last week, more or less, on a presentation of forgiveness as A Course in Miracles defines it, and as A Course in Miracles suggests that we practice forgiveness. And one of the things that's really, really interesting here is that we've arrived at lesson 69, which says, my grievances hide the light of the world in me. And that is that's something that's very, very important, and it's worth an explanation here. One moment. And what we're talking about here is the grievances that we hold, grudges that we hold against people in the world, against situations, against entire nations, against entire political parties, hide the light of the world in us. So backing up a couple of lessons, if you're just joining us, we are, in fact, the light of the world, truth. And our grievances hide the light of the world in us. Why? Because we've looked the last couple days at love itself. God is love. Love is abstract. It's limitless. And love holds no grievances was yesterday's idea. So today's idea, naturally, logically, builds on that. What happens if we hold grievances? Well, what happens is we forget who we really are. Who we really are is not who we think we are. It's not who we say we are. It's not how we present ourselves on social media, is it? It's really not. It's something completely different, something that has always been there and has never gone away, despite our getting completely lost in definitions of ourselves, in misadventures, right? Maybe you call them misfortunes. In the experience of life here in the world, it gets obscured. But the truth, our reality, has never gone anywhere. It has always been there. Therefore, we can access it. And we'll talk about that today. Lesson 69 provides us with one way that we can access this. So when we're holding a grievance or holding a grudge, what we're doing is we're limiting ourselves. How are we doing that? We're seeing ourselves as separate from somebody else. If you're holding a grievance against your neighbor, let's say, you're seeing yourself as separate and your neighbor as separate, and he or she has aggrieved you. I mean, they could have done whatever, right? Whatever, however they did it, but it was something that maybe has given offense somehow. You fill in the name of the person. We can all point to many, 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 maybe too many, right? Examples in our lifetimes of when someone held a grievance against us or when we held a grievance against them. Yeah, it really is kind of a combative world if we choose to see it that way. And that's the point. If we choose to see it that way, there's all kinds of things going on, all kinds of shenanigans. And if you prefer, you can use a different word for that. But I know you thought of it. So, but we won't utter that here. Our grievances cut us off from who we really are. Why? Because we see ourselves as separate. So foundational to A Course in Miracles and spirituality in general is the fact that there is no separation of any kind. So to say that we're all one is not just some statement that people like to make at a reggae concert or something. Right? It's not just a rainbows and unicorns statement. It's the truth. It's truth. There is no separation of any kind. However, when we identify with the construct that we call the ego, a separate sense of self, we get offended really, really easily. We're obscuring the truth, and our grievances hide the light of the world, which is union, which is joining its total love, which knows no limitations at all. So that's what's going on. And we're here to undo this. This is the point of spiritual practice, is to have us work with ourselves on ourselves to remove the barriers to the experience of love. In other words, we're removing clouds or veils, if you prefer, that are covering temporarily who we really are, which has never gone anywhere. It's never gone anywhere and has never changed. We have just chosen not to recognize it. Now you may think, well, no, I would never do that. Well, we all sort of did at one point. When, we don't know. And that question doesn't really help us very much. I mean, it's a natural question. I wanted to ask this. Okay, well, when did this separation happen? Yeah, when exactly did we go wrong and decide to separate from God and go off and start playing by ourselves to our own massive detriment? Yeah, when did that happen? Well, that question can't really be answered by the logical mind. Who we really are is beyond the logical mind. We are not our logical thinking minds. We're not our bodies. None of that. Ultimately, that's not who we are. However, we can experience who we really are, and we can do that right now in the present moment. Number one, we have to realize that it's possible. Two, we have to decide to do it. That is why on this live stream, if you've caught past episodes here, I am always, always saying we have a choice right now, today, in the present moment, between love on the one hand and fear on the other. The more we choose love, the more of these veils or clouds or barriers we lift. Now, today's lesson 69, this idea talks about a basic meditation that is very powerful. And I highly recommend that you read the commentary for lesson 69 and that you also make the choice to Do this practice. It can be very, very beneficial to you. And like I've said many times here on this live stream, nothing is lost in spirituality. If you attempt a meditation and you're only able to concentrate for 10 to 15 seconds, that is better than nothing at all, much better, and nothing is lost. If you have an experience of concentration for a short period of time, you'll be back because we start to recognize ourselves. That's what happens with diligence and with making the decision over and over again to practice, no matter what your practice looks like. We keep coming back to it. We begin to experience life in a different way. Things begin to flow differently, don't they? Not a single one of us is the same person today as when we started out our spiritual practice. It's simply not possible if we make the decision to stick with it. In other words, there's no going back. Isn't that exciting? Because, I mean, if you've reached this point, which you have because you're watching this live stream on Enlightened World Network, number one, you're interested in this, which tells me you've reached a certain point where it really isn't satisfying to go back. It's not satisfying to go back and hold grudges and grievances. It's not satisfying anymore to withhold love. It's not satisfying to withhold forgiveness from people. Why? We begin to feel it eating us. Yeah. Once you've reached a certain point, then it's moving forward from there. And why would you not want to? Despite the little voice, the ego, that chirps at us constantly that, oh, you hate these people. Remember, you hate these people. You don't agree with their political views. You don't agree with their religious views. You hate. And then this voice just wants to keep us separate, keep us in status quo, the way it is, where each of us is experiencing a roller coaster of experience, a roller coaster of emotions, where one minute we're feeling great, the next minute we're feeling terrible. And it alternates. You could have a day where you have a preponderance of beautiful experiences, and then the next day it could really suck, and vice versa. It can flip-flop. 5 minutes from now, you could be feeling great if you're not feeling well right now. And unfortunately, the opposite also holds true. You could be feeling beautifully aware, beautifully energetic, loving right now, and then something might happen 5 minutes from now that will plunge you from that height, and you'll experience fear, you'll experience resentment, you may experience a grievance. What's happening is, well, we're limiting ourselves when we hold these, especially when we hold them for a long period of time. So the meditation here is it's longer than I want to do on a guided meditation on this live stream, so I'll describe it for you. But the workbook talks about standing outside a circle of just clouds. Then imagine that you see dark clouds up ahead of you, like a wall that extends forever and ever and is infinitely high. It appears to be infinitely thick, and you're standing outside of it. And that's all you can see. So our grievances are like these clouds. If we are determined to go past them, which is why some of the workbook lessons say, above all else, I'm determined to see. Yeah, I'm determined to go past these clouds. If you formulate that determination and begin to visualize yourself walking toward that wall of clouds, you realize once you get there that it's not solid. It's like a fog bank. And if you continue to formulate the determination in the moment to go through, you'll walk right through them. And there is brilliant light, limitlessness on the other side. And you get there and reach them, and you realize the clouds have all evaporated. In fact, you can realize that they were never there to begin with. Just like passing clouds, those are our grievances. like clouds that obscure the light. They hide it. Light hasn't gone anywhere. It hasn't gone anywhere. This is a very beautiful meditation, and I highly recommend that you take the time to practice it the way the workbook for students suggests that you do. Now, what you may find going through this and visualizing yourself walking through, penetrating and moving through and beyond the clouds, what you may find is that you feel lifted up. You may feel more energized. You may feel more joyful, happier. You may find that. And you may find yourself actually carried through and beyond. And if you do, that's fantastic. It's God's will that we see through and move through these clouds. And you know what's significant about that? It's our will too. God's will and our will are the same. They're one and the same. God's will is our own. So you formulate the determination to see, you formulate the determination to move past the clouds, and you are quite literally not alone. You're not on your own, and infinite power and strength and love goes with you 24/7. It's always been there. It has never gone anywhere. Reality simply is. And we are the ones that have chosen to see ourselves separate. When do we make that choice? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The logical mind can't answer that question anyway. So why bother? We're the ones that have chosen to experience separation. We can choose union. This is the beauty of choice. And this is something that's worth coming back to as many times as we can and must in spiritual practice, is we have a choice right now in the present moment. And if we choose love, we notice those clouds get thinner and thinner. And at some point one day, when, I don't know, could be in 15 minutes, could be years from now. We don't know, but the clouds will be gone. At one point, they will be gone. So again, the lesson for today is my grievances hide the light of the world in me. They limit us. And our practice, our work here spiritually, is to not limit ourselves, but to go beyond those limits. They're illusory, like a bank of clouds. And we realize in the end that they were never there in the first place. All right. So thank you all for tuning in here. I'm going to look at the comments. This is one of my favorite parts, is some live interaction. So if you have questions or comments about today's lesson or anything else related to A Course in Miracles, let me know, and we'll get to them right now here. Bernadette, hey, how are you? Thanks for tuning in. Yes. Yeah, popcorn-looking clouds are not so finger-licking delicious, but can be extremely light and able to push through. Yeah, behavior is always a choice. I love it. Okay, so I love popcorn, by the way. So thank you for that analogy. I love that. Yeah, clouds are, yeah, they're light and they're playful. And when we're kids, we think we look at a cloud and we think we see an elephant, or we think we see a horse or a building or something, and we imagine them to be more solid objects that you can bounce on or sleep on or something, but they're just water vapor and they burn up really, really easily in heat. They just evaporate. They're pretty much illusory. They're here one minute, gone the next. And yeah, popcorn looking clouds can be extremely light. And you know, one of the things I love about that is they can part super easily too. You know, a thunderstorm, like a raging cumulonimbus cloud and a thunderstorm with lightning seems a little bit more dark and ominous. But yeah, a lot of clouds are just wispy and fluffy even. And behavior is most definitely always a choice. Yeah, this is the fun thing about spirituality, is we get to choose. We get to choose how we show up moment to moment, and we get to choose either love or fear. And the more we choose love, the lighter the clouds become, the lighter you feel, by the way, and the more connected you feel, all kinds of things. Think about your own spiritual path and how differently you feel today as opposed to when you started. What has changed? What has shifted for you? This is a really, really good question to ask yourself in those days where things seem a little difficult, because there will be those days where it doesn't seem like anything is working, where the world may seem stacked against you, where you are tempted to berate yourself as incompetent or unable to grasp the teachings or something, right? We all do this to ourselves. So, a good question on a day like that is, all right, how have I really changed? Am I a different person? And in that context, it can be very rewarding and very uplifting to see how much you really have become a different person, more loving, more forgiving, more lighthearted. That makes the clouds feel even lighter. It gives you more energy, more pep, more step, gumption to walk through. And it's a very useful analogy. So I'm happy that lesson 69 here talks about it in that way, because that's really what it's like. There seem to be a wall of clouds, but we can walk right through them. And well, we might get cold and wet along the way, but we'll walk right through them anyway. And when you're through the cloud bank, there's your limitlessness, the truth of who you've always been. All right. So thank you all for joining me here today. And if you're going to join me on the replay, thank you for joining me on the replay. This is a daily live stream, so I'll be back here tomorrow. And this has been A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. Thank you for joining me.